Nobody expected a single movie to quietly drag half of Hollywood into a courtroom. But that's exactly what just happened. Private texts, emotional emails, and some of the biggest names in entertainment suddenly appearing in legal documents they were never meant to be part of. What started as a behind-the-scenes disagreement has now exploded into something much bigger, with messages involving Taylor Swift, Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, and Ryan Reynolds, all laid bare. Words that were meant to stay private are now being dissected by lawyers, fans, and the entire internet. And the most unsettling part? These messages don't just reveal frustration or loyalty, they hint at fear. Power plays in a production that Blake Lively claims nearly broke her. So how did a film meant to tell a love story turn into one of Hollywood's most uncomfortable legal battles? Because once these texts were unsealed, everything changed. Before the headlines, before the leaked texts, and long before Hollywood names started surfacing in court documents, everything began quietly on the set of It Ends With Us. On paper, it was supposed to be a sensitive, emotionally driven film. Behind the scenes, it was anything but calm. In December 2024, Blake Lively filed a lawsuit against her co-star and director, Justin Baldoni. The accusations were serious, claiming inappropriate behavior and retaliation tied to the film's production. Baldoni immediately pushed back, denying everything and calling the claims false. What followed wasn't just a legal defense, it was an all-out escalation. He responded with a massive countersuit, worth hundreds of millions, accusing Lively of damaging his reputation and career. The industry took notice instantly. This wasn't a quiet disagreement anymore. It was two powerful figures accusing each other of crossing lines that Hollywood rarely talks about openly. Then came the twist. Baldoni's countersuit didn't survive. It was eventually dismissed, shifting the momentum and placing even more pressure on what was coming next. Because while the legal fight appeared to slow down on the surface, something far more damaging was already in motion behind the scenes. And that's when private messages never meant for public eyes began making their way into the courtroom. What really changed everything wasn't a press interview or a red carpet moment. It was paperwork. Quiet, technical, and easy to overlook until it wasn't. As the case moved forward, previously sealed court documents were suddenly unsealed. And that's when Hollywood realized this situation was about to get very uncomfortable. Buried inside those filings wasn't just legal strategy. There were names, lots of them. More than 100 potential witnesses were listed, including some of the most recognizable faces in the industry. Actors, models, musicians, people who had nothing to do with the lawsuit on paper, yet were now permanently attached to it. Then, in January 2026, things escalated again. A batch of emails and text messages was officially entered into the record and made public. These weren't vague references or secondhand accounts. They were direct messages. Emotional, blunt, and sometimes explosive conversations between Blake Lively, her husband Ryan Reynolds, and several A-list celebrities. Suddenly, this wasn't just about what happened on set. It became about who knew what, who was contacted behind the scenes, and how much influence personal relationships may have had during the fallout. Fans and insiders began combing through every line, looking for hidden meaning and unspoken alliances. And one name appearing in those messages instantly sent the internet into a frenzy, because no one expected her to be involved at all. When Taylor Swift's name appeared in the court documents, everything shifted instantly. This wasn't a background celebrity mention or a casual name drop. According to unsealed texts, Blake Lively had reached out to Swift during post-production, asking her to support a revised version of the script that was being proposed. The messages, as presented by Baldoni's legal team, suggested Blake wanted Swift's endorsement even before the script had been fully reviewed. Swift's alleged response was short, enthusiastic, and deeply personal, the kind of message friends send, without thinking it might one day end up in a courtroom. But Blake's attorneys immediately pushed back. They argued the texts were missing critical context, saying Blake had actually sent Taylor the script and made it clear there was no pressure to read or support it. According to Blake's testimony, Swift happened to be on her way to visit when tensions were already high at Blake's home, and the exchange unfolded during that moment. Afterward, Blake reportedly thanked Swift, calling her epically heroic and telling Ryan Reynolds she had recapped everything that happened. Supporters say this shows friendship in a stressful situation. Critics argue it raises questions about influence and behind-the-scenes lobbying, and just when it seemed like that was the end of Taylor's involvement, another set of messages surfaced, ones that would ignite even more speculation online. Up until this point, the messages could still be explained away as support between friends. But the next batch of texts shifted the tone completely. According to documents filed with the court, Taylor Swift allegedly sent Blake Lively a message commenting on Justin Baldoni's behavior in a way that felt deeply personal, not professional. In one exchange, Swift was quoted using sharp language, suggesting Baldoni sensed something was coming and was reacting defensively. Blake's legal team didn't deny that the wording appeared in the documents, but they strongly rejected the interpretation being pushed by the defense. They argued the message wasn't proof of any coordinated effort, just a private reaction in an emotional moment. That distinction became everything. Because once those words were public, fans immediately began speculating. Some believed the messages hinted at inside knowledge. Others saw them as nothing more than friends venting behind closed doors. Online discussions exploded, every phrase analyzed like a coded message. Then came the moment that pushed the reaction even further. After a major article about the case was published, Swift allegedly messaged Blake again, saying she had helped people who would never have to go through this again. For supporters, it sounded empowering. For critics, it raised new questions about timing and intent. And with each message released, the line between personal loyalty and public consequence became harder to ignore. As the texts kept coming, one phrase immediately stood out, not because it was dramatic, but because of who it was sent to. In emails later unsealed by the court, Blake Lively allegedly described her experience making it ends with, "Us" is something that nearly killed her. These weren't messages sent to a therapist or a close childhood friend. They were sent to major power players in Hollywood: Matt Damon, Ben Affleck. Names that carry serious weight behind the scenes, not just on screen. According to the filings, Blake reached out during post-production, explaining the emotional toll the project had taken on her. That move alone raised eyebrows. Some viewed it as a cry for support from people she trusted. Others questioned why actors with no direct involvement in the film were being looped into such an intense situation. Either way, the implication was clear: this wasn't just a difficult shoot. Whatever happened left a lasting mark. The wording sparked another wave of debate online. Supporters argued it showed vulnerability and the reality of working under extreme pressure. Skeptics wondered whether the language was meant to influence perception ahead of a legal battle. And because these messages were never meant to be public, the truth sits somewhere in the middle. But just when it seemed like the situation couldn't get more personal, another familiar name emerged, and his involvement would only raise the stakes even higher. At this point, it was impossible to separate the legal fight from the personal one, because woven throughout these messages was another constant presence: Ryan Reynolds. Not as a bystander, but as someone actively involved in the conversations unfolding behind the scenes. According to the unsealed filings, Reynolds was looped into multiple exchanges and was kept up to date as events unfolded. Blake allegedly shared detailed recaps with him, including her interactions with Taylor Swift and her growing concerns about the situation. To supporters, this looked like a husband stepping in during an overwhelming moment. To critics, it looked like influence extending beyond the set. Reynolds' involvement added a new layer of complexity. He isn't just a celebrity spouse. He's a powerful figure in Hollywood with strong industry relationships. That reality fueled online debate about whether his presence shifted dynamics. During post-production and beyond, nothing in the documents suggests he crossed legal lines, but his proximity alone intensified scrutiny. Because when someone with that level of reach becomes part of a private dispute, perception changes fast, and as attention continued to build, the conversation moved beyond the courtroom, straight into the hands of the public, where things would spiral even further. Once the documents were unsealed, the internet moved faster than the lawyers ever could. Within hours, screenshots of the messages were everywhere. Every line was dissected, every emoji debated, every name dragged into a conversation they never agreed to join. Fans quickly split into camps. Some rallied behind Blake Lively, saying the messages showed someone under intense pressure reaching out for support. Others questioned the power dynamics at play, arguing that involving A-list friends blurred the line between personal loyalty and professional influence. And in the middle of it all were celebrities who suddenly found themselves trending for simply being mentioned. Online forums and comment sections turned into digital courtrooms. People debated intent, timing, and whether private messages should ever carry this much weight in public opinion. Rumors spread quickly, with some claiming this was proof of coordination, while others dismissed that idea entirely. None of it was verified, but that didn't slow the conversation down. What made the reaction even more volatile was the timing. With the actual trial still months away, public perception was already shifting. For better or worse, the narrative was being shaped in real time, long before any verdict could be reached. And that raises the question no one can answer yet. What happens when a case is tried by the internet before it ever reaches a jury? At its core, this was never supposed to be a public spectacle. It started as a film, then a private conflict. Now it's a legal battle, pulling some of the most recognizable names in entertainment into a spotlight they didn't ask for. And the trial hasn't even begun. What makes this situation so unsettling isn't just the accusations or the leaked messages. It's what they reveal about how power, loyalty, and influence quietly operate behind the scenes. When private conversations become public evidence, the line between support and strategy starts to blur in ways Hollywood isn't used to confronting. No verdict has been reached. The claims are still disputed, and many of the messages being debated were never meant to be interpreted by millions of strangers. Yet public opinion is already forming, shaped by fragments of conversations and unsealed documents released piece by piece as this case moves closer to court. One thing is certain: the outcome won't just affect the people involved. It will change how celebrity friendships, private texts, and behind-the-scenes alliances are viewed moving forward. Because once Hollywood's curtain gets pulled back this far, it's almost impossible to close it again.